The Denver Broncos get a massive deal done with wide receiver Courtland Sutton. And boy, the Broncos sure do look dangerous this season. We'll discuss on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso. With the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the Madden 99 Club, which dropped on Monday, and I'm going to talk about a player who didn't make it, and I think it's ridiculous. And that player might play for the Kansas City Chiefs, who might have found their answer at their biggest question spot. But we are going to start. So excited I can barely handle myself, Lauren, with the other team in the AFC West that could be making a run here, and it's the Denver Broncos, who give a massive 4-year deal to wide receiver Courtland Sutton, locking down Bo Nix's #1 target. And Lauren, I guess just for me, the Broncos seem like a dangerous team. You start to look at the roster. They may not have the star power all over the roster, but they have some really, really good players all over the place. In year 2 in the system for Bo Nix, now he's got Courtland Sutton, his big physical outside target who can go up and win these contested situations for him. It just seems like the Broncos are in a really, really good spot, and this move right here just is another piece of good vibes for the Broncos going into the year.
Yeah, this is exactly the luxury of having a quarterback on a rookie contract that you actually trust, right? Okay, now we feel like we got one. We can spend big money on Courtland Sutton and reward some of the other young players that they've been building up to support that young quarterback.
Yeah, I think that Bo Nix is a guy who I'm looking at. I think the second-year quarterbacks are very, very interesting to discuss, and Bo Nix needs to not just play the same that he was, which probably surprised some people, including me, but he's got to take that next step too, and he's been working on doing that in the offseason, getting together with another guy who knows Sean Payton's system pretty well.
To understand that to be in that small, very, very small percentage of players at the quarterback position who are truly great in the NFL, you have to work in such a way that very few people will ever work. There's a leadership principle that says if you want what few people have, you have to do what few people do. And Bo Nix exemplifies and embodies that. He's taking these extra measures that are very Peyton Manning-esque. And I want to get better in terms of being a passer or a thrower of the football. So I'm going to hire Tom House as a consultant to coach me up in this way. I want to get better at understanding Sean Payton's offense. So I'm going to go to the guy that understood it better than anybody for a longer period of time than anybody has ever played with Sean Payton, right? So you see Bo Nix taking these steps and these measures to be better in year 2. He understands that you have to actively go out and chase that level of greatness.
Do you think that there's any path towards Bo Nix being the best second-year quarterback of the top 6 guys that got drafted last year in the first round? Do you see a path towards Bo Nix actually being the best of that group in his second year?
It's tough to see, like, right now this year be the best of that group, just given less about Bo Nix and more about what some of those other guys have. Like, I look at the Denver Broncos and, you know, they added Evan Ingram and they upgraded the backfield a little bit, but I don't know that they have, like you mentioned earlier, like they don't have a lot of the big name kind of firepower. Whereas like you look at Washington and they go out and get Deebo Samuel, right? And they still have Terry McLaurin and you know, they've got some nice veterans and plus an offensive system that we've seen him thrive in and be great. Like it's hard to see him taking a step back. So now Bo Nix has to like catch up to a team that's also added some real firepower. And even, you know, Caleb Williams in Chicago, they added tight end and a young receiver for him and a new offensive coach that's supposed to fix things. Like there's going to be a lot of competition from those second year quarterbacks. And it feels like, and we could throw in JJ McCarthy, I suppose, but it'll feel like his first year, but like all those guys are going to be really good. And even if Bo Nix isn't the best, doesn't mean he's not right there with him as a promising young player for the long term.
And honestly, they don't need him to be the best for them to go to the playoffs again because their roster is super solid. I think even a guy like Michael Penix, he has a lot around him in that offense, a lot of talent, pretty decent offensive line. Like he could be a guy who could come in and has enough supporting cast around him, I think, to take a big jump, even though it's not his rookie season like with J.J. McCarthy because he was out the whole time, because he got some play time at the end of the season, but it would be his first full year expecting to be the starter. I guess I get where you're at with Bo Nix, but even a good Bo Nix season, I look around especially with the talent on defense, like Zach Allen and John Franklin Myers, and now they had Dre Greenlaw. Even though Drew Sanders is going to be out, I think, you have enough with Nick Bonito and Pat Surtain. Like, they add in Jahdae Barron even in the first round. Like, there's so much talent on the defense. On the offensive line, Garrett Bowles has been solid for quite some time. Ben Powers is very solid. I think Quinn Minor's obviously one of the best interior offensive linemen in the league. So they don't have that star power, but they're so solid. And I just feel like Sean Payton has his program, going now. The momentum is going. I look at the Broncos, and again, we've had this conversation. I've been high on the Chargers, and I'm starting to feel a little buyer's remorse. And I gave them a little bit of the jinx, it seems like, since I got high on the Chargers. But if you're looking at a team to take the Chiefs to the brink and maybe steal the division away from them, would you actually go with the Chargers or would you ride with the Broncos?
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were talking there, like,
right,
could Bo Nix be the second best quarterback in the AFC West? I mean, like him versus Herbert is a fun conversation just about supporting cast and receivers that they have there. But I don't know. There's something about the way that Harbaugh has such a stability there, where it's not so much like, oh, we think all of a sudden that Justin Herbert's going to have a 5,000 yard season and establish, but like just as far as team success goes, like Harbaugh comes in and has success early and consistently and often, and that's no shot at no slight at Sean Payton, who's also been a very, very successful coach, but like we've seen Harbaugh do it consistently with a variety of levels of quarterbacks, and not Sean Payton's fault, but like having Drew Brees the whole time certainly leaves me with a little bit more of like, well, let's see how this keeps going out, especially when they do lose a couple pieces on their staff here and there, and there's some turnover and some changes, and how they adjust to having a young quarterback in year two that now the rest of the NFL is really going to be adjusting to. Now they all have tape on Bo Nix to be able to throw some good things at him. So how Sean Payton guides that quarterback through that process, as opposed to previously having a Hall of Famer, or even Jim Harbaugh has a veteran in Herbert that no one's really throwing new things and surprising Herbert anymore either. So there's more room for things to go wrong, I feel like, in Denver, but there's also maybe even a higher ceiling given what Nick and some of the weapons there can do that maybe the Chargers don't have.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how Bo Nix rebounds after they did kind of take the NFL by storm. And I think there's another aspect to it of that the Broncos aren't sneaking up on anybody anymore. Like, the Broncos were good last year. People know that they're going to be in for a fight with the Broncos. So I think that does kind of change the way people play you and how teams get up for your games and things like that. So I think that'll matter too. But I think that the Broncos are going to be a solid team. I still think the Chargers are going to be a solid team. Like, the AFC West is just, I have a hard time taking any of those three teams and leaving them out of the playoffs. And especially when we're hearing nothing but great things on the offensive line out of Kansas City, which was their biggest question mark. And if they have that solved, it could mean some electric things in Kansas City. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there. You're logging on early. You're waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music shouldn't be about dealing with stress and ticket shopping. It should be about making memories, and that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as you get closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. That's why I buy all my tickets on Game Time. They have the best features in the industry. You get a panoramic view from your seat right on the app. You get all-in pricing with no hidden fees, and you get the Game Time guarantee, and it has your back with cancellation protection. So you should take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the big deal for Courtland Sutton, where we see the Denver Broncos right now, a team that can have a really high ceiling, but seems to have a pretty high floor as well, depending on what happens with Bo Nix. But I want to move to the team that they're trying to knock off here, and it's the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think we have talked about where the Chiefs need to get better, where the Chiefs have gotten worse from their previous Super Bowl teams. And I think the offensive line is the big thing, because not only does that offensive line struggle hurt the entire offense, but it really reduces what Pat Mahomes can do as a player. But we're hearing that their high draft pick, Josh Simmons out of Ohio State, who had a major injury his last year in college football, but was scheduled to be maybe the top offensive tackle taken in the draft before the injury. The Chiefs get him now, and he's absolutely showing out in training camp. My guy Chris Clark from Locked On Chiefs talked about that.
Talking about Josh Simmons being off to a very hot start in training camp. It is still early when we're talking about training camp. It is the first day of pads, but everything that you wanted to see from him, he has done, and he has exceeded my expectations. Did not expect him to be in pads this early into camp after they drafted him, and now he is the starting left tackle as it sits right now. We will see if that changes in the near future, but as of right now, he is left tackle one, and he is definitely playing the part in pads in training camp. Not only did he get all the snaps at left tackle from what I've seen as the Chiefs starting left tackle with the first team, he did it when Jalen Moore was sitting on the sideline because Jawan Taylor returned to practice today. He came off the PUP list and played right tackle for the Chiefs. He was the starter. Jalen Moore rotated in with him on a regular basis. I would imagine that we will see rotation at the left tackle position at some point in the near future. I would expect that they're going to give Jalen Moore some snaps, at least to make sure that he stays to where he's able to go and play that position if he needs to. But I also think that they're going to probably give him a couple of snaps at left tackle to give maybe Simmons a little bit of a time, a little bit of rest, considering he is working back from his knee injury. But everything that we have seen so far looks like he is healthy and he is 100% ready to go. This could not be a better situation for the Chiefs at this point.
I mean, just absolutely perfect. If you could find a guy who has top 10 talent to fill your biggest position of need that also allows your best player to be even better than he's been in recent years, that is a win-win-win. And you have a Jalen Moore who, like you said, is probably going to rotate in some, but at minimum could be an excellent swing tackle. I'm not huge on Jawan Taylor at right tackle either. If Jalen Moore played over him, I wouldn't be absolutely shocked. But either way, that's at least 3 good NFL-level tackles that can solve your biggest problem over the last few years.
And this is how great teams stay great, right? You invest in a ton, and they have a little bit more of the luxury to be able to take a chance on a player like this, where it's like the bad teams are picking too early in the first round to really reach on him, but then they don't pick again until the second round, so they don't have the opportunity to get him the other way around. So it's this sweet spot for teams like the Chiefs to stay there and say, hey, you know what? Like, we think we're getting a player that was well deserving of being drafted earlier. Like, we're getting so much bigger boom for our buck than other picks around the area, and that's how you keep a team talented and stocked with cheap available talent. I mean, you look at the Chiefs offensive line now, it's a first round pick at left tackle, a second round pick at left guard, a second round pick at center, and now Trey Smith on a big extension. He was a 6th round pick, right? It's these homegrown talent players that generally keep the cost down, so you don't have to give a Jawan Taylor a huge contract in free agency and then hope for the best when I think they'd like to move off of him with a rookie at some point here too.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it trickles down from there too, because the guys that they've had to use in these spot places, like a Wanya Morris, like a Mike Caliendo, these guys who have been thrust into positions that maybe they weren't quite suited to play for the Chiefs, and we could point out, those holes, those guys now fall back into where they should be, into backup roles. So when the injuries do hit, you have a guy who has had real experience in your system in big moments and was asked to be a starter, even if that's not what's best for them. And that could trickle down to even when the injuries hit, the offensive line level of play stays higher than maybe you have had in recent years, because your backups are better suited and more experienced than they've been before. So I think it could make a total turnaround for the Chiefs. But I will say, just for the Chiefs in general, I am a bit worried about their win total. They won so many one-score games last year, end up going 15-2 when the team wasn't as good to maybe be that good in record. They're obviously going to have a tough schedule as they do every year, but very difficult. I mean, half of their games are in other places. Like they only have like 8 or 9 normal Sunday games. So the schedule is difficult. There's new pieces. You know, it is still a rookie offensive tackle, even though he's doing great in the first week of training camp when, you know, the pads just got on and everything like that. I guess I still in the back of my mind, although this is great news for the Chiefs and could totally change their season and their outcomes for sure, I still in the back of my mind have a little bit of doubt for the Chiefs this year. I think that, like I've been talking about, whether it be the Broncos or the Chargers, one of these teams is just going to be hungrier and win the division, and the Chiefs will still make the playoffs as a wild card, but I do see a slight step back for them this year, even with this news.
Yeah, and it's always funny, right? When doubts about the Chiefs means, oh no, they're only going to win 11 games.
Yeah, right.
Like, oh boy, it's not doubting whether this team is actually good. It's doubting how special and elite they will continue to remain to be. And I think it speaks volumes about them and their offensive line that in the offseason they can move on from Joe Thuney. We get to training camp now and we're saying there's not really too many concerns about the offensive line, despite that future Hall of Famer, but certainly like Pro Bowl, like perennial Pro Bowl player that you just got rid of. No, we're doing just fine without him, and we got a draft pick in between. Like this could have easily gone south, and this could have been a huge weakness of this team. Of like, oh no, we still have all these questions and these holes and these young guys and these backups filling in. And it's like, no, they're sitting pretty good. And so yeah, there's luxury of being able to know that, like, yeah, there's going to be different amounts of stability and some little question marks about younger players, but you know that baseline Chiefs level of success is going to be there.
Yeah, and that is sort of institutional stability that they've built, obviously, where you can kind of count on that. But one thing that has been bothering me is the conversation around Pat Mahomes, because it seems like people are just bored at this point, and they finally lost a Super Bowl again, and people are just taking the opportunity to act like Patrick Mahomes isn't Patrick Mahomes. And our guys over at Locked On Chiefs talked about that recently as well.
Right now, he's got less hair. I think he's got less gut, but everybody wants to call him fat and overrated, and I don't understand what's going on. He is neither of those things.
Yeah, you kind of stole the thunder right off the top. I look at everybody calling him overrated, and it's just, you sit there and you go, 5 Super Bowls in 7 years. How do you call that overrated? Like, I don't understand. Like, I understand he's lost 2 Super Bowls. Okay, how many QBs haven't even made a Super Bowl?
Honestly, no offense to our buddy Joe Marino, and he does have a legitimate gripe. That's fine. How many Super Bowls has Josh Allen been in? So I don't want to say
the same thing. Joe Burrow's been to 1. He lost. Josh Allen's been to 0 because he can't get past the guy that we're talking about right now.
Right.
And that's all it really comes down to. He can't get past Patrick Mahomes.
And for all those derogatory comments about how, he had the 15th rated offense in production last year. He had this, he had more whatever, the shortest air yards of his career. Okay, fine. None of that matters because he got W's and he got enough points on the board to get those W's.
Now, listen, a lot of that is, QB wins. But what I would say is, I don't think that the Chiefs the last couple of years have had a significantly better roster than like the Ravens or the Bills. Like, we're talking about teams that are stacked here, that have great elements to their team and are good enough to do it. And I know that Mahomes has not been as explosive and electric statistically as he was in the first iteration of the Chiefs, but I think that's a reality of him being able to change to what the team needs from him. Not that he's incapable of being that electric playmaker anymore. So, I'll tell you the honest truth. What got me off on this tangent here, Lauren, is Madden dropped their 99 overall club, and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are in it, and Patrick Mahomes isn't. And I just continue to say, this is insane. We all know that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback.
And I think there's sort of like two sides of this conversation, right? It's could you talk yourself into Mahomes not being a 99 this year because he had kind of a down year? Sure.
Yes.
But then you don't also make all those points 99. So like these things can be true at the same time. That, like, yes, maybe Patrick Mahomes doesn't need to be a 99 because he was a little bit worse, but it's not as though that Lamar Jackson and all these other quarterbacks were like fully, truly better than Patrick Mahomes either. So like he should still be on the same level as them. If you're gonna make them 99s, then he should still be 99. But if you're gonna bring him down because he had a down year, like he's not a step below where those other quarterbacks are.
Right. My answer is not that he should be 99 too. It's that none of these guys should be 99. None of the quarterbacks should be 99s. It's too hard to play. And I mean, Josh Allen had a good year, but it wasn't his best statistical season. Well, Lamar Jackson had a good year, but it wasn't his best finish to the year. Mahomes didn't have his best statistical year. I think all of them should be like 97, 98. But what are we really arguing about there? What I really want to do is look at the non-quarterbacks that were the 99s overall and talk about whether or not they deserved that honor. Today's episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. Look, fantasy football is back, folks. Fire up the group chat, get your draft boards ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions that we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy this year. Me and some of my co-hosts here at the Locked On Podcast Network are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. Look, Yahoo has been doing this for a long time. They've made such a smooth draft day experience, and they have a great mobile app with easy setup, and I love the smack talk and the message boards in the app. To celebrate 28 years of their fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins August the 4th. Stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. All right, Lauren, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the Denver Broncos, big deal for Courtland Sutton. We talked about the Chiefs and some developments from their training camp. But now I got to talk about these Madden ratings. Why do people care about artificial ratings in a simulation football video game? I don't know, Lauren, but tell the truth, we all care. We all care about the Madden ratings. That's why even people who say they don't care are getting in by saying that they don't care. Look, at the end of the day, we talked about the quarterbacks, Lamar and Josh Allen. I think that Patrick Mahomes deserves to be on that level at minimum, even if, we agreed that maybe just taking him down from 99 is the right thing. But the non-quarterbacks who got the 99 tag, Lane Johnson, right tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles, Jamar Chase, wide receiver from the Cincinnati Bengals, Justin Jefferson, wide receiver from the Minnesota Vikings, Myles Garrett, defensive end from the Cleveland Browns, and Saquon Barkley, running back, Philadelphia Eagles. Lauren, do you have any issues with this list? Is there anyone you think shouldn't be on and anyone who you think should be on?
Yeah, I mean, it's we get nitpicking with, guys like, okay, yes. It's like kind of like the Mahomes thing. It's like, did Myles Garrett have a 99 year or a 98 year last season? I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. I can't help but feel like, well, he was second in Defensive Player of the Year voting to Patrick Surtain Jr. Like, doesn't that, not that instantly means he's a better rated player per se, but like if right. Surtain's not a 98, 97 in there, then what are we doing there? Like Kirby Joseph had 9 interceptions last season. It was third, I think, in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Like, I don't think Kirby Joseph is an overall a 99 player, but that's kind of how he played last season. So it's always this tough battle between, are we just looking at what they did in the last regular season, or is there a body of work thing that makes Myles Garrett a 99 and Lane Johnson 99 as older players who've been so great for so long that there's not that they had bad years, but just that there's a certain amount of like consistency that builds up them that where they have to be 99 even when they're not necessarily at their absolute peak currently.
Yeah, I think that there is a body of work that goes into it, and that's why I do agree. I think Myles Garrett probably should be a 98, not a 99. He didn't have his greatest season, and it's the same argument that we talked about the quarterbacks. It's not like Myles Garrett had his best year of all time last year. And you could say, get into the analytics and how you balance the raw box score stats with the film and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't look at last year Myles Garrett and be like, oh yeah, absolute peak. He's 99. Lane Johnson, I get. I think Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley, and Justin Jefferson all definitely deserve that honor. I'm not going to argue against any of them, but I would again say that it's about equal levels. And I think Penei Sewell, right tackle for the Detroit Lions, is just as good as Lane Johnson. I think he was better than Lane Johnson. I think he is better than Lane Johnson, but they're both in the same tier to me. So if you're going to put Lane Johnson there, I just think Penei Sewell deserve the award as well. And let me say this. I know A.J. Brown doesn't put up the numbers that Chase and Jefferson do, but A.J. Brown is just as important to his team and just as talented. So I would just say that he deserves maybe some consideration there. Maybe make A.J. Brown a 98, and I'll be happy.
Yeah, and I think you got to throw Derrick Henry in this conversation when, like,
right.
I feel like almost with running
for
back
a video game, especially
being older, that like
yes.
he wasn't a career high rushing yards, but it was a career high yards per carry. Like he had almost 2,000 yards rushing. He had a career, he led the NFL with 16 rushing touchdowns. Like if there was ever going to be a year for Derrick Henry to get the bump up and be right, but maybe because he was just behind Barkley, you'd have a 99-98 situation. But it feels so arbitrary of like, okay, you get two wide receivers to both get to be up there, but only one running back. Like, how are we separating Justin Jefferson for just Jamar Chase in the same light?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think Derrick Henry definitely deserves consideration. And like I was saying, especially in a video game where you're trying to find a way to measure these players' impact and just how different it is to play against Derrick Henry on a Sunday compared to other running backs in the NFL, I think the 99 tag would have been fair.
And I wonder about like, George Kittle had a great year too, and he's got the sort of, but again, like, is he getting, like, there's this weird mix between like getting punished for being old, so you can't still be a 99 player at this stage of your career, whereas like Lane Johnson and Myles Garrett are older and they get credit for being so good for so long. Like it's almost like a positional thing where it's like, well, running backs and tight ends deteriorate sooner, but offensive and defensive linemen maybe don't, and so they get to be 99s longer, but it doesn't feel like a super fair evaluation of like how good they were last year and how good we're still expecting them to be this year until they show us that they're actually slowing down.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where if you think about it too long, you realize just how arbitrary it is. And realistically, it's probably people just in a conference room saying like, man, it'd be cool to get an Eagles player in there. Let's do Saquon. You know what I mean? So I think there's some of that to it too. But nonetheless, it's football discussion and it's always fun to discuss because, hey, it's Madden and we all grew up on it. So there it is. But let us know who you think your 99s are. And Lauren, anybody else you would have added?
I would love to see like a special teams player eventually get to a 99, like a Denver, but I don't think we're in a very good era of that right now. Like I look at this past season and there were a lot of guys that I thought would be in the 99 conversation that didn't have good enough years, like a TJ Watt, who was still very, very good, but like, the sack numbers were down just a little. I mean, there's a lot. I was like looking through players and a lot of guys where it's like, oh yeah, he's still really good, but maybe it wasn't like Puka Nacua had a good year, but he was hurt for part of that. Aiden Hutchinson was really good before he got hurt. Like a lot of guys that were close that they play all 17 games or were closer to their regular form than they would be there. But it's just like, well, kind of a down year for enough guys that it narrows down the group that we're working with.
No, 100%. And I think we got to be on the lookout for a guy like Bijan Robinson, who corrected his name after like 7 years in the American zeitgeist. It's Bijan, not Bijan. I guess we'll try our best, Bijan. You waited a little too long. And Hutchinson, if he's able to come back to form, that could be a guy who maybe makes an appearance on the list as well. So those are names to kind of keep an eye on going forward next year. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, Lauren Cox. As we tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.